Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show podcast, coming from right here in our quaint little studio. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and it's an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news, TV and streaming, and all sorts of good stuff. I'm joined in studio today by Ray Ora.
Whoop, whoop.
Jonathan Voiko's here.
Hey, everybody.
And most importantly, well, you guys are here. Thanks so much for being here, making this little show part of your day. And here's how the show's going to go. We're going to start off by talking about a bunch of predetermined topics. Then in the second part of the show, we get to the most important stuff, which is taking your live comments and questions. Now, if you have a comment, question, observation, thought, or theory you'd like us to address, as long as it's appropriate for us to address on the show, go ahead and use our tip link to fire it on in at www.streamelements.com/JohnCampea/tip. And the best thing about this tip link is that you don't have to be watching live to use it. I mean, you can send in questions right now if you want, but even if it's like 3 a.m. and a question pops in your head and you want to send it in, or if you're one of the many people who can't watch the show live, but you still want to have a question addressed, again, as long as it's appropriate for us to address on the show, go ahead and send it on in and we'll get around to it on the next episode. All right. That down, guys. Let's get things started here. Before we get into the first story, got to mention something. Today, June 12th, my wedding anniversary.
Oh, nice.
14 years ago today, and you can bring this up, Jonathan. I married what is simply the greatest woman in the world. I got to do what all, or at least a lot of men dream about, which is to marry their best friend. And I met Ann Ora, was not looking to get into a relationship because I was planning on just coming to Los Angeles for 1 year, and then I was going to go back to Canada. And didn't work out that way, because I met this girl, fell head over heels in love with her. She is my best friend. She is my main video game partner. She is the dungeon master of our role-playing games. She's my co-adventurer when we go out on little adventures around the city, around the state, go camping or hiking or whatever. She will soon be Docter Campea.
Woo!
She is the one who's turned me on to many of my favorite comic books. And she is just simply, I mean, to quote Mary Jane, I hit the jackpot with this woman. Again, some people say, find somebody you think you could really work well with. I say nay, as this picture shows. I say find somebody you can play with your whole life. And Ann and I have spent 14 years I couldn't be more lucky. I am the luckiest guy in the world. She is the perfect partner, and love you, baby. She's only about 45 feet away in her office on a business call right now. But happy anniversary. By the way, I got a brother-in-law out of it too. I mean,
oh wow,
that was kind of
a
the
shitty deal
like,
you got.
Like, you can marry me, but Ray comes along with the deal. So
yeah, that almost
Negates it all.
yeah, almost like ruined the plans.
You get,
almost killed the deal.
you get sick graphics out of it.
Yeah, deal break. You know what I remember most, though, about our wedding day? Besides the fact it was so cool, Ray, I remember your dad.
Oh yeah.
Because your dad looks so freaking gangster. Our wedding, we had an outdoor wedding, and Ray's dad, it was the first time I had ever seen him in sunglasses. And there's Ann's mom and dad sitting in the front row, and he's wearing these sunglasses. I'm like, holy shit, he looks like the freaking Asian Godfather.
Well, you
The
know what?
Pinoy Godfather.
It was a big deal to him. He Ann was his little baby. They like hung out all the time, so that was like a big deal for him. So yeah, he had to come all suited up.
Yeah.
And G'd up.
Anyway, so 14 years. 14 years, baby.
Yeah.
Love you. Happy anniversary, sweetheart. Okay. With that down, guys, let's get on to some stories here, shall we? And holy crap, breaking news.
Woo!
For many decades and decades and decades, there were these things called the Paramount decrees, which basically, I mean, it's more complex than this, but basically said movie studios could not own movie theaters or movie theater chains. Now, a couple years ago, the Paramount decrees got overturned because we live in a different era now. That, the rules didn't really apply as much or in a different way than they did back in the day. But really, no studios have bought anything. I mean, Netflix bought like 1 or 2 theaters.
Yeah.
Like they bought
like
the
boutique
Egyptian in
style.
Hollywood, right?
Some boutique style.
And then they bought a single standalone theater in New York as well, but nothing big. Well, that's done. Because according now to the Hollywood Reporter, Sony Pictures has acquired the financially distressed, but in fan communities, iconic movie theater chain, Alamo Drafthouse, and what they're calling a landmark deal, not to be confused with landmark movie theaters, and a landmark deal that puts studios back in the theater game. All right, this literally just dropped about 20 minutes ago. So this comes to us from the Hollywood Reporter, says this: in a groundbreaking moment, Sony Pictures Entertainment has acquired Alamo Drafthouse Cinema in a deal that puts a major Hollywood studio back in the business of owning a movie theater for the first time in more than 75 years. From 1948 to 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice prohibited film distributors from owning an exhibition company under what was known as the Paramount Consent Decrees, or just the Paramount Decrees, which arose from a 1948 U.S. Supreme Court ruling. The decrees essentially dismantled the old Hollywood studio system by forcing the majors to divest their theater holdings. At that time, the majors essentially controlled all aspects of filmmaking, from the talent to the productions to the theaters. The decrees forced exhibitors to stop practices like block booking, which was a huge problem, bundling multiple films into one theater license, and circuit dealing, entering into one license that went on and on and on and on. So now, the first thing I want to point out here is that Alamo Drafthouse is a small theater chain. I believe it's 37 locations, right?
Kind of like iPick, they're not a huge chain.
Exactly. Well, which is bigger than the John Campea movie theater chain.
That's true.
Which is my living room. But, I mean, they're not AMC or Regal or Cinemark or even Harkins or anything like that. But 37 marquee theaters. Like, I remember when they opened their Los Angeles location a couple of years ago, it was culturally, it was a big deal. In this town. Alamo Drafthouse, while I've never been a big fan because of the guy who used to own them, because I'm not a fan of that particular individual, but even when that person owned them, I'm like, listen, I got to admit, Alamo Drafthouse does a lot of things right, man. And now they're owned by a movie studio. This, I have so many questions. And again, you have to forgive kind of my disjointed thoughts on this right now, because literally I just found out about this 20 minutes ago.
Right.
But it raises many questions. For example, will Sony have to charge their own movies that play in the theaters the same amount of ticket retention and all that kind of stuff that they charge other people? Because remember, even though it's all under the Sony umbrella, every individual movie is treated as its own enterprise, and they have their profit margins and their losses. So is Sony going to give special treatment, special rates to Sony movies that play there? If so, is that anti-competitive? Will that get them sued? Will they only show Sony pictures?
I don't think they can get away with that.
I don't know that they can get away with it either, but if they own it, they have the right to say what movies they want to and what don't want to play.
Yeah.
Will they actually use their own technology, like their screens, their cameras, whatever, to actually play
That's
movies?
a great question too. Because, I mean, Sony was at the forefront, by the way, of the transition to digital cinema.
I mean, they do make other than LG, they do make some of the top OLED or OLED.
And they've actually even been getting in the business. They've been developing their own actual, basically TV screens in movie theaters. That are like the most giant screens ever. Samsung's been making them too and stuff like that.
The possibilities are endless here, because they even have PlayStation. Will they make buying movie tickets easier through your PlayStation? Will they have ads coming across screen to watch it at their theater? There's so many
Are they
things.
going to pull an Apple and make a complete ecosystem
Could be.
out of this? Where
They can. They have enough assets now.
And
to
what about
actually-
this? What about this? How about this? Let's stretch. We're just spitballing here. Okay, you bought a ticket to a Sony movie at a Sony movie theater. Does that ticket come with a digital code that maybe in a month you can stream that movie on your PlayStation if you own
That's
a PlayStation 2? Do they, or will that become anti-competitive and get them in trouble like Google and Apple have gotten in trouble?
I think where they have to be careful though is they're going to have to maintain, and I know they said they're going to maintain, but they got to maintain that quality and that feeling of Alamo Drafthouse.
Oh,
They can't start getting
okay.
cheap on it.
Okay.
And they got to make that a premier movie theater experience, which Alamo kind of delivers.
Well,
So-
they did, because I watched ever since they went into bankruptcy last year. I just recently watched. It was on YouTube, but I watched this like 20-minute news expose on how Alamo Drafthouse workers have been so mistreated lately that they've actually been talking about unionizing and stuff
that's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
And it just looked like that's been going to crap. But listen, Sony brings what's the technical term? Oh, yes, an ass load of money to the table. And if Sony decides to pour real capital into Alamo Drafthouse to make it what the ideals of Alamo Drafthouse always was, and make it the premier movie-going experience, it will not only will that be great for anybody who lives near an Alamo Drafthouse to go see their movies in, but it will force the other stalwarts in the space, Regal, Cinemark, AMC, all of which you do a bunch of things right and some things wrong, whatever, but it'll force everybody to raise their game a little bit.
Wasn't Sony one of the first people? I remember going to the first CinemaCon where I came with you, our very first one. One of the things before every presentation.
That's the one where we sat down with Hugh Jackman, isn't it?
Yeah. They said, oh, we now have these cameras set up in the room. So if you're trying to film what we show, and I believe those cameras, whatever they were that were there, were from Sony. I think it was called, I want to say Eagle,
a lot of theaters already have those.
Eagle Eye, but that was the first company.
Yeah, they're pretty common devices now.
Okay.
Yeah, those like night skill things that can detect cameras in theaters.
But my point is, Sony has had their hand in the theater games, in some sort of way, right?
Well, I mean, like a lot of studios, they've had their hand in the theater experience to one degree or another. But I mean, this is the first time in forever, because listen, when the Paramount decrees got overturned 4 years ago, a lot of people said within the next couple of months, every single studio is going to own one of the theater chains. And I said at the time, no, they won't, because they understand, they know how tough it is to actually make money owning movie theaters, which is why they screw over the movie theaters so much. And I said, we are not about to see a flood of studios buying up. And sure enough, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and none of them did. And now when we've got one, Sony's bought a big name, but small movie theater chain. It's going to be interesting to see if they can figure out a way to make it profitable for them.
One more thing, Joe. Do you think this will, if they actually do get this going, do you think like it'll convince like maybe directors who like theatrical releases to actually possibly favor Sony, like bringing their movie to Sony or this and that?
Well, remember, it was Sony at CinemaCon, right? They're the ones that got up on stage and said, we ain't about making straight to streaming movies.
Right.
We make theatrical movies. Because remember, Sony is also the one studio that is like, we're not getting into the streaming game. We don't have Sony Plus, and we have no intention of making Sony Plus. We make movies for theaters. So I think they've already kind of become, in many ways, the ideal spot for directors who want to make sure their movies get theatrical release and stuff like that. So listen, this can all tie in a lot of different ways, like how they could connect this to the PlayStation experience, how they can connect this to what esports. Alamo Drafthouse could become like a go-to location now for like PlayStation esports kind of stuff too. I mean, the possibilities here are really, really quite big. And it's going to be interesting to see. Again, you have to forgive the disheveled thoughts I have here, because again, we just found out about this, but the possibilities and the questions right now seem to be endless. Anyway, the question is for you guys. What do you think about this? Sony Pictures has become the first movie studio in my grandparents' lifetime to actually now own a, albeit small, theater chain. They now own Alamo Drafthouse. The possibilities are endless here. Could be a very good thing, could be a disaster. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's talk about this, shall we? Remember how Paramount was getting ready to sell to Sony? Well, that didn't work. Well, then it looked like Paramount was about to sell to Skydance. Everything's done. The leadership at Paramount said, yep, we're ready to go. There was just one little technicality. Sherry Redstone, who owns 77% of the ownership there, killed the deal. She got a hold of the other leadership at Paramount and said, I'm axing the deal. We're not doing the deal. I own 77%. Doesn't matter what you vote. I'm saying no. Kill the deal. And immediately, the stock price, I don't know if you saw this, Jonathan, but the stock price of Paramount upon news that the sale was killed took a wily coyote off the cliff.
Yeah, I think it even held up a sign.
Yeah, saying,
and then it just dropped.
and it dropped like crazy. But was it calculated madness? Was it calculated madness? Because over at the Lightshed Partners, Richard Greenfield in his newsletter actually put out an article that kind of lays out that how, number one, there might be method to the madness here and what happens with Paramount now moving forward. Now, he laid out three different things. The first thing he laid out was that we're about to see a new CEO, because right now, remember, Paramount put into place the idea of like they got like three guys operating as co-CEOs. Mm-hmm. He says the first thing, they're going to put one CEO in place. But then he suggests these things that he believes is going to come to Paramount. A Paramount course correction. As they wrote back in March, Paramount needs to take immediate action to stem the bleeding at Paramount Plus. That's an understatement. It's been a massive money loser for them for a while with no signs of getting profitable. The current strategy has no hope of creating viable, profitable, long-term business. There is minimal at best engagement with Paramount Plus relative to the dollars invested, and putting content on Paramount Plus is hurting the value of Paramount's IP. So basically, like they got Star Trek and all that kind of stuff, right? But the very fact that they're putting Star Trek on Paramount Plus is hurting Star Trek.
Right.
Because it's a ghost town, right? Former CEO Bob Backus' strategy was flawed from day one and deserved to be fired for it. We expect aggressive battle between Amazon Prime Video, Warner Brothers Discovery Max, and NBC Peacock to license Paramount's content or create some form of joint venture with Paramount Plus, no matter what happens. Paramount Plus's future will look very different within weeks, with Paramount focusing on maximizing and reaching engagement through third parties. Okay. This is actually kind of brilliant. Paramount has tried to be what almost everybody else other than Sony has been. We're going to be a studio that puts out movies in theaters and stuff on television, and we're going to have our own streaming network. Hence, they created Paramount Plus. For the record, I like Paramount Plus. I don't open it up very often.
Nope.
Probably the least out of all my streaming things. I definitely open Hulu more. I definitely open Disney Plus more. Definitely Max. Definitely Peacock. Definitely Netflix. Definitely Prime. All more. So it might be the least one I open up the least. So they've been trying to do that and putting their stuff on Paramount Plus, and it has not worked out. And they have been bleeding money. Bleeding money. So this option of shut down Paramount Plus and instead let's license out our content, essentially doing what Sony is doing. Instead of getting involved in the war, let's be arms dealers. Let's create the content that other people bid for. So this gives them two options as we go over to the Campea classroom here. Option A, if they do this, is they form one all-inclusive license deal with one partner. For example, if they make a deal with Max, then everything that Paramount produces will then end up on Max. After it's done its regular television or regular theatrical runs, it all ends up on Max. They could sign a very lucrative deal with Warner Brothers Discovery and Max to become the exclusive licensee of the content that Paramount creates. That could make them a lot of money. But it also has a second option, option B. Make each streaming service bid for each individual IP. So for example, they got Star Trek. Okay, make Max, Peacock, and Prime all bid for Star Trek. And whichever one wins, they get Star Trek. But say their new Yellowstone show. Yellowstone, 1426, or whatever ones they want to have. Right?
Right.
Now that, it doesn't have to go to the same one that Star Trek goes to. Make all the streamers bid on that. Say Netflix, Disney Plus, and Prime. Bid on that one. So they have two very viable options available to them here. That coupled with sell off a lot of the assets they don't use, right? Like BET is a valuable asset, but it's not really in their brand. So a number of other things they got, some non-CBS affiliate networks that they have across the country, sell those off. put all that money they make on selling off that stuff against the debt, start licensing out content, and get back to doing what they do best, which is make great movies.
Yeah.
Ideally.
I think there'll be a bit of a hybrid of the two. I think what you'll see is a bidding for the IP, but I think the stuff that is like purely Paramount Plus original content will probably be partnered with as a group with one of those, Netflix or Max or whatever.
Right. So they have several options open to them right now. So while it seems disastrous on the surface, because that's the first thing I thought. I thought this is a disaster when Sherry Roadstone killed the deal. But, you know, upon further reflection and some really good arguments being made about how this could work out in their favor and how it could turn things around. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning and says, you know, this could be the way they turn a $5 billion company back into a $15 billion company. They're never going to be a $50 billion company again, but this could be the way to do that. And it's interesting. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? The idea that Paramount gets out of the streaming game, shuts down Paramount Plus, and just does what Sony does, create content that other people then pay for and license. Can it work? Can it not work? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys, that down. Let's move on to this, shall we? With bated breath, I've been waiting for the completion of what could be one of the greatest cinematic trilogies of all time, to be mentioned up with the likes of Lord of the Rings, The Godfather, and Star Wars. We're talking about Paddington. Woo. Paddington, who I had to drag John Schnepp along with me to the first press screening of the first Paddington movie, because I'm like, I don't want to watch this garbage, so if I got to suffer through it, you got to suffer through it. And you're like, yeah, all right. And we went to watch this waste of time Paddington movie. And we came out thinking the world looked like a better place because it made our hearts smile. That first Paddington movie, I don't care. And you know what? Nick Cage in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent had it right when he said maybe the greatest sequel of all time is Paddington 2, which was every bit as good as the first one, setting up what could be one of the greatest trilogies of all time. Well, today, Variety let me know that Paddington in Peru, Paddington 3, Britain's beloved bear is back for another adventure, this time with Olivia Colman as a guitar-wielding nun. Everything about that statement, sign me up. Sounds good to me. They dropped the trailer. I did not know the trailer was imminent. I had no idea. I really didn't. They dropped the trailer for the new Paddington. And you know how I said I went to go see the first one, all of a sudden made my heart smile? My heart was smiling. I'm watching this trailer. The world just seemed like a better place. That's the magic of these Paddington movies. Like, you watch them and then instantly the world feels like it's a better place, or definitely can be a better place. And it had that warmth and that charm and that adorable cuteness. And I just found myself, like, the whole time I called Anne in, like when I saw that the new trailer dropped, because Anne loves it too. And I didn't watch it. I pulled her in so she could watch it with me. And every time I peeked over at Anne watching the screen, she just had this biggest smile on her face. And I realized I did too. And I don't know if it's going to be as good as the first two. It's a very, very high bar. But damn it, I loved this trailer. I thought it was great.
This one is missing the original director of like the first.
Yes, he's a producer on it. Yeah, but he didn't direct this one.
Okay, so you know, that was worrisome, right, to some people when that was announced. Or really, does that really matter with a movie like this? You think?
It definitely matters, but like the guy who is directing has been involved with the first two films, working with the director of the first two films. So, I mean, in an ideal world, I think it's Peter King. I think that's the director of the first. Yeah, I think I think that's the guy who directed the first two. Correct.
Yeah.
Fact check that
up right
who
now.
directed the first two? I think it was Peter King directed the first two. At any rate, but he went on to make Wonka, right, with Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah,
and
Paul King.
Paul King. Okay, and Wonka was. I remember watching Wonka. I'm like, I could tell the Paddington guy directed this. It's got that warmth and that beauty and that charm to it, and it was just so good. But, you know, I really believe that this one can sometimes, listen, a movie franchise, even a great one, can benefit from a change of somebody in the director's seat. So We'll see, but I loved it. Ray, I heard you watching the trailer this morning. What do you think about it?
I mean, how can you not look at this bear's face and not smile and also feel it in your heart that your heart is smiling too? Like I really love this trailer. It's so cute. I cannot wait to see a little bit more, just a little bit more. Just give me one more trailer and then I'm all set. I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And you know what? I got worried. I got so worried because he goes to visit his aunt at the bear retirement home in the deepest, darkest jungle of Peru. And he goes, what's, I can't remember his aunt's name, but he's hello. And he goes into a room and the room's empty. I'm like, oh, she died. Oh no, no,
that would
she
make
died.
that would make it a way different movie.
Oh, it would have been a way different movie. And then like,
no.
oh my, I breathed such a huge, like I didn't breathe for the next 15 seconds until like the nun says, oh, she went off on some adventure, so on some quest. I'm like, oh, thank God.
So he's out of his comfort zone right here.
Well, no, actually he's back home.
Oh, he's back home. Sorry.
He's back home. But the family,
that's who I'm talking about.
the family's out of their comfort zone.
Which should make it a pretty interesting, probably
Well,
very funny.
Different mother, right? Because it's not the same actress that was in the first Paddington.
You're right. It's not, because it was
Sally Hawkins.
who was actually in Wonka, and you're right. It was they changed the actress from, I don't know why.
Obviously, that director made
Probably schedule thing.
If he had to choose between Paddington and Wonka, considering the money Wonka made, he made the right decision. Right?
Well, I don't think it was a money thing. I think it was more of a, creatively moving on to something. He spent a lot of years of his life making the first two Paddington, and he's still involved with the movie.
Okay.
So I just tell you guys, I'm so happy. I love the trailer. I cannot wait to watch this. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to this, shall we? The other day, some really good Star Trek news came out, which we don't often get to say that, but they've got a new series coming. They got a new series coming called Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which sounds promising.
Yeah.
But then it really sounded promising when they got someone I consider to be one of the all-time greats, Holly Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
They went out and got Holly Hunter to kind of be the lead of the show. And I thought, holy crap, that's amazing that you got her to do that. That's great. I'm actually looking forward to this. Well, now they made it even better, because according to Variety, one of my favorite actors in the world, Paul Giamatti, who just won a whole bunch of awards this season, has been added to Starfleet Academy as the main bad guy. He's going to be the villain, apparently. And they write this: set phasers to stunned. I see what you did there, Variety. In another casting coup, the upcoming Paramount Plus series Star Trek Starfleet Academy has cast Emmy winner and multiple Oscar nominee Paul Giamatti in a recurring guest role as the first season's main villain, who has a sinister connection to the past of one of the yet-to-be-cast cadets. Giamatti joins Holly Hunter, who Variety exclusively reported in May is boarding Starfleet as the Academy's captain and chancellor. So they have just added some major award-winning star power to this series. Now, look, the Star Trek series of late has been a little hit and miss. I mean, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I think, is the best thing Star Trek has made since The Next Generation. Like The Next Generation is my favorite Star Trek thing. But I mean, then, of course, you got Wrath of Khan and all that kind of stuff. But I think that has been like an amazing series. I've absolutely loved it. Picard Season 3 was really solid. I think Picard Season 1 was good. Picard Season 2, not so much. Discovery was hit and miss here and there. So it's had some wins, it's had some losses, but I've always liked the sound of Starfleet Academy and the idea of taking a show there. It's kind of like in Star Trek's way of doing a Hogwarts. Starfleet Academy's Hogwarts.
Yeah, a little ways. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. How do you think they're going to go about this? Has Star Trek always been a serious, more not funny? Do you think they'll actually go reverse?
Oh no, you go back to the original series. It's always been a blend. It's always been a good balance of real deep themes wearing a robe of light and fun. And sometimes they get a little bit more serious. Sometimes they go a little more light. But that's always kind of been Star Trek's tradition. And I think they'll definitely do that with Starfleet Academy too.
So nothing like Lower Decks.
No. It won't be anything
No,
like
like
Lower
Abbott
Decks.
Elementary.
No.
No. People would revolt if you did
Yeah,
that.
there will definitely be humor. There will definitely be fun. The original series did. Next Generation did. Absolutely did. I mean, like, all you have to do is go back to the Next Generation and see Worf drinking prune juice for the first time and going, "This is a warrior's drink." I mean, Star Trek has always done that, right? They've always done that, and they always will, and they should find that balance, right? But again, how good these scripts must be to get a Holly Hunter on board, to get a Paul Giamatti on board, like all that kind of stuff. I think it's wonderful. Remember, he's getting busy too, because it feels like after The Holdovers, which he won a bunch of awards for, also got nominated for the Academy Award again, all that kind of stuff. He's done everything. He's done everything in the business. And it feels like now, because he just signed up to do that Hostel series, because he loves horror stuff. It feels like Paul Giamatti's now entering that phase of his career. It's like, you know what? I want to do stuff I love, because he's a massive Star Trek nerd, Paul Giamatti. And he loves horror. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to do a Hostel series, and I'm going to do Star Trek. And it seems like he's just leaning into the stuff that he really loves, which I think is a really cool thing. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Additionally to Holly Hunter, we now got Paul Giamatti has joined Starfleet Academy. I know that's not a title that's getting everybody excited, but personally for me, this is putting it more and more prominent on my radar. How do you guys feel about this? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, we still got to talk about a couple other things, including Russell Crowe saying he's kind of uncomfortable with the very fact that they're doing another Gladiator movie. The head of Pixar, Peter Docter, is saying, yeah, this whole thing of taking animated things and turning them live action, not going to do it at Pixar. And those rumors that are persistently going around that the Batman 2, Robert Pattinson's Batman 2 has been canceled, James Gunn directly addresses that. We're going to talk about that and a few things more. But before we do, we're going to take a quick second and thank one of the sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at Miracle Made. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Miracle Made. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so that you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. When they arrived at our house, my wife Ann loved the feel of them so much, she couldn't even wait for me to get home to put them on our bed. Miracle Made has self-cleaning. These sheets are infused with silver that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. Miracle Sheets also have incredible comfort and quality. Miracle Sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So go to TryMiracle, that's TryMiracle.com/Campea to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code Campea at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to TryMiracle.com/Campea and use the code Campea to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's TryMiracle.com/Campea to treat yourself. And thank you to our friends at Miracle Made for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, at the recent CinemaCon, they gave us our first big look at the upcoming Gladiator 2, a movie that a lot of us rolled our eyes at because at first, remember the first idea for the film was the gods decided to send Maximus back to the mortal realm and all that kind of stuff. And like all of us rolled our eyes. But you know, with the, Denzel Washington in there, Pedro Pascal is now in there, Djimon Hounsou's returning, they started to put together such a radical and great cast and everything. And then, of course, it's Ridley Scott, the master, the guy who did the first one. I gotta admit, I didn't love the presentation they showed us for Gladiator 2 because I love the original film. But, it was just a presentation. We'll see. Well, apparently somebody else is a little bit uncomfortable with this. Maximus himself.
Oh, what?
Russell Crowe, because Russell Crowe was just interviewed about it, and he's a little nervous about it. This comes to us from Variety. He wrote this. In a new interview on Kyle Meredith with, Crowe said, "I'm slightly uncomfortable. The fact that they're making another one, you know, because of course I'm dead and I have no say in what gets done. A couple of things that I've heard, I'm like, no, that's not in the moral journey of that particular character. But you know, I can't say anything. That's not my place." Well, you just did. Anyway, that's not my place. I'm 6 feet under, so we'll see what that's like. All right.
All right.
So it's like saying your mother's a whore. All due respect.
All due respect.
All due respect. It's like, yeah, no, they're doing this thing with this character. I'm like, no, you can't do that. But it's not my place to say anything. So like, okay, Russell. By the way, just for the record, Russell, for those of you who don't know, Russell Crowe is one of my absolute favorite actors. I love Russell Crowe as a performer. I don't love all of his movies. Clearly not. He's been in some bad movies, but I've always loved his performance. Like, I just think he's an awesome actor, and I love the guy. I gotta say this, though. I get uncomfortable when, number one, I don't like when directors bash other directors. That's not your place. Let other people do that. Let other people criticize or whatever directors. I don't like when actors bash other actors or their acting, you know. There's plenty of people out there to do that. That's not your place. You don't do that. You stay above that. Don't worry about it. I listen, as a huge Russell Crowe fan, I gotta say, I don't like Russell Crowe coming out and saying stuff like this. I don't. Now listen, I can say it because I'm not connected to Gladiator. I can say, I saw the presentation for Gladiator 2 and I don't know if it really excited me. That's fine. That's for me to say. That's for you as fans to say. I think the guy who is the face of the franchise, frankly, it comes across as a little petty to me, even as one of my favorites. To say now, granted, he didn't go hog wild on it.
Yeah.
He didn't say, Gladiator 2, what kind of crap is this? Like, he just said, listen, as he goes, not my place.
It wasn't like the Crowe director. Who was like...
Yeah, it's not like that, or a few other things. Like, he was much more reeled in. And he did kind of bite his tongue. It sounds like before he said too much, he says, a couple things that I've heard. I'm like, no, that's not in the moral journey of that particular character. But then he stops himself and says, not my place. I am very curious to see how this movie turns out because, listen, I started getting excited about Gladiator 2 once we started hearing the cast that was getting together for it. Mm-hmm. Again, you get an all-time great like Denzel Washington signing up for it. He must like what he saw. You get a number of people who are signing up for this, like people who have options.
Pedro Pascal.
Like Pedro Pascal is being offered everything right now. And like he chose, instead of the 18 other things I'm being offered, I'm going to take this one. So I started to get excited about it. And then we got to CinemaCon and we saw all, like, especially in Caesar's Palace, which is all Roman themed, right? They have all this Gladiator 2 stuff all over the place. And I'm getting revved up. And then they showed us the presentation. And I was just, it didn't make it move. It remains flaccid. It did not get me. It didn't get me hyped. You know, I actually walked away from that presentation a little less excited for it than I was going into the presentation. And that is the complete opposite of what these things are supposed to do. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about it, but I still don't feel as big of a fan as I am of Russell Crowe. Russell, you know I love you, but I don't think he should have said anything. I think when he asked the question, he should have just said, you know, I won an Academy Award for that movie. We won Best Picture. Ridley Scott is a master. And just like everybody else, I'm looking forward to seeing what Gladiator 2 gives us. I think that just would have been the better thing to say. But again, he was pretty tame. He reeled it in a lot. But I gotta admit, he kind of said exactly what I kind of thought too. Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Two separate questions, really. Number one, what do you think about what Russell Crowe said? He wasn't the writer of the first Gladiator anyway. But number two, where's your expectation level right now for Gladiator 2? Are you super excited like I was? Are you a little bit pessimistic like I currently am? Are you just hoping for the best, which I am also doing? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. That down. Let's move on to this, shall we? Something that's turned out to be very lucrative in the world of like Disney is to take old classics and make a live action remake. You know, sometimes they've turned out really good, like Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
Cinderella. Kenneth Branagh's Cinderella. Love it. I think it's fantastic. And they got a couple other things too. Or Maleficent, which I think Angelina Jolie was fabulous in it. I did not like the Maleficent movies at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they've had hits and misses with it. So one of the things that we've not had a live action thing for is a Pixar classic. And in a recent interview, the head of Pixar, Pete Docter, basically said, nah, don't count on us ever doing live action remakes of our animations. This comes from the folks at Deadline who said this. Docter said, if Inside Out 2 doesn't do well at the theater, and I believe it will, I think it just means we're going to have to rethink even more radically about how we run our business, Docter said in an interview with Time. Docter was then asked about a viral fan campaign to make Ratatouille into a live action film, something he doesn't even want to consider. No, he said. And this might bite me in the butt for saying it, because it might get him in trouble with his Disney bosses. This might bite me in the butt for saying it, but it sort of bothers me, he told the publication. I like making movies that are original and unique to themselves. To remake it is not very interesting to me personally. Docter said that making a live action film about a rat would be tough, and added, so much of what we create only works because of the rule of animation. So if you have a human walk into a house that floats, your mind goes, wait a second, hold on, houses are super heavy. How are balloons lifting that house? Obviously referring to Up.
Sure.
He continued, but if you have a cartoon guy and he stands there in the house, you go, okay, I'll buy it. The worlds that we've built just don't translate very easily. So listen, what he said as a major Disney executive, the head of Pixar, is saying something that seems to run contrary to what the overall corporate philosophy has been at Disney, that, hey, yeah, if we've got a classic animated thing, we can look at making it into a live action. And Peter Docter says, no, no, no. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even have to be an old classic like Cinderella. It can be Moana. They're making a live action Moana, right?
Was
And Peter-
Moana Disney and not Pixar? Oh, yeah, that was Disney. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Disney.
Yeah.
So it's like, which, I mean, they're both really.
I know, but the division.
We all make a distinction, but really they're the same thing. They have a lot of cross-pollination of their talent and executives, but be that as it may. So, number one, I think it's very interesting that Peter Docter, being the head of Pixar, would say this because, and I like that he said, this might bite me in the ass for saying this, but, and when he says bite me in the ass, I think he's saying that specifically because his bosses may not like that comment. The bosses may very well want to do a live action Ratatouille. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't mind seeing a Ratatouille live action. I think it'd be very interesting to see how they do that. But Pete Docter makes a really, really valid point about how, and I've been trying to talk about this a lot, but I think Pete Docter just put it better than I did. There is a difference in expectation and in the acceptable suspension of disbelief we have when we see a cartoon or an animation versus when we see something real in live action. There are things that can work in animation that if you, like, for instance, I've said this and I got a lot of people mad at me, and that's fine. Be mad at me if you want. But X-Men 97, which is great for what it is. I stayed up till midnight every night to watch the new episodes that would drop all the time. I loved X-Men 97. I loved the original X-Men animated series. I loved X-Men 97. But the reality is, if you took X-Men 97 and made a line-by-line, shot-for-shot, live action version of that, it would come across as ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as Pete Docter just pointed out, our minds take things in differently when we're watching things in, like, say, the media of animation versus the media of things. One's not better than the other. One's not superior to the other. They're just different from each other. And we interpret them differently. And I think he's right. You tried to do Up, and you just have a bunch of balloons picking up a house in live action. We're going to look at that and go, that's ridiculous. Whereas they do it in animation and it's awe-inspiring and fills us with wonder and all that kind of stuff. And so I like both things that Docter said here. Number one, he said, I like to make these movies unique unto themselves because they're animated and we can only do them this way because it's animated. And then the other thing he said, listen, the stuff we do in animation just won't translate to live action. But Ratatouille is the one that I wonder if it could. I'm not sure if it would,
Maybe.
but I wonder.
I mean, the thing is that with Pixar and with the older Disney stories, those stories are hundreds of years old. They were storybooks. They were ballets at some point, like Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
They were grounded in reality, and so you could make a live action because Disney doesn't inherently own Sleeping Beauty. Like that was written hundreds of years ago.
Yeah. Now their iteration of
But there's
Sleeping Beauty is
iteration,
theirs.
right?
Yes.
So that affords you some believability in making that a live action or whatever, even a Snow White or whatever. But Pixar, it was made more in the modern age, and it was made like we were talking about earlier. You know, you're going to do a live action of a bunch of toys running around in a kid's bedroom. I mean, it doesn't translate. Like it's more exceptional as Pixar.
Right.
So
That would actually be cool.
no, but I mean that could be Babes in Toyland, but I mean it's just not the same, you know?
That's an analogy. Listen, I admit too that there are a number of times that an animated film, like I do wonder, it would be a unique and a different experience to see it in a live action. Like, look, for all the bad press that the live action Beauty and the Beast got with Emma Watson,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't great, but there was something very different about seeing it in a different media format, right? It was for me very much a different experience, even though it was the same story.
Yeah.
It created a different kind of experience. And for that, I think there is still some inherent value.
There are some. So like I think like something like Coco could be a live action.
Coco could be a very interesting
You
live
know.
action thing too, right?
I don't know that you do Incredibles because you already have superhero movies. I think something like Finding Nemo would be kind of weird, you know, and Cars would be really strange.
I don't think there's any way to do Finding Nemo live action.
Yeah.
Those would all
Wall-E.
that would be CG, but even Wall-E, that would just be CG.
Yeah.
Right? The whole thing would be CG. Anyway, guys, I think it's really fascinating that you got a Pixar head saying, I know this is contrary to my boss's philosophy, but we won't do live action remakes. I don't know. Do you think that's going to get him in trouble? Do you like his stance on this? Or maybe you're like a lot of the other people online that are saying, I'd love to see a live action Ratatouille. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. That down, let's move on to this, shall we? You know, when they first announced Matt Reeves's Batman movie was coming, it was met with a lot of backlash. You can't do a Batman outside of the DCU. You've already got a DCU thing going. And then, if you thought that was bad, then they announced who was going to be playing Batman.
Twilight Boy.
Boy. What? Robert Pattinson. And a lot of people got their little knickers in a twist up their pucker holes when they announced that. Turns out the movie was a smash hit with the audience, with the critics, and with the box office, making close to $800 million. Pattinson was great in the role. And it faced a lot of uphill battle too, because it had to fight against the fact that Batman on the big screen didn't have the best reputation at the moment. There were going to be multiple Batman going around. The whole Twilight Boy thing, like all that kind of stuff. It was all working against it, and yet it came out tremendous, flawless victory. But we've been waiting for a long time, and there were rumors a while ago that Batman 2 was simply canceled. And then the rumors came up again when James Gunn and Peter Safran took over DC, saying that, well, James Gunn's going to cancel it because he's not going to want another Batman outside of his DCU. And all that and they've persisted and persisted. And just in the last couple of weeks, the rumors have ramped up more and more and more because we've been waiting for so long. That that's actually, I heard it's been canceled. How many times I read that on? I heard it's been canceled. Yeah, it's been canceled. Been canceled. It's like, that's funny. Why would they cancel a mega hit that was huge with the box office, the audience, and the critics?
Go woke, go broke, baby.
So finally, somebody asked James Gunn on social media and asked him this. Hey, James, is the rumor true that Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2, including the trilogy, will be canceled? To which James Gunn just said, of course not, with an eye roll. Of course it's not canceled. Now, this goes on, quoting our own Jeff Schneider, saying, according to Jeff Schneider of The Insnider, director Matt Reeves and star Robert Pattinson's The Batman sequel will begin production in 1 year, actually less than a year from now, on April of 2025. And the new cast members are expected to be announced this fall. There were reports that filming was supposed to begin back in November of 2023, only to be pushed to March of 2024 amid last summer's writers and actors strikes. However, Warner Brothers officially delayed Batman 2 from October 3rd, 2025 to October 2nd, 2026. So, as far as we know, they're supposed to go into production this coming April, so a little bit less than a year away. And then about a year and a half after that, it's supposed to go into theaters 2026. Now, look, I am not happy as a fan that they have to take this much time in between these movies, right? It's unnecessary for there to be this much wait in between movies. Listen, I get it. I understand. There was upheaval. We had writer strike. Then we had actor strike. Schedules got shot all over the place. Now, well, let's start shooting Batman here. Well, we can't. Robert Pattinson's already committed to that time period for something else. And our producers are like, I get it. I still think they can get it out earlier than late 2026, but whatever it is, what it is. I think the notion that James Gunn was going to cancel this, I just, from the beginning, I thought was idiotic. Why would you cancel something that is one of the very, very few things that DC had going for it that was actually working? And does not, because it's in its own standalone universe, it has no impact on what you want to do with a brand new DC cinematic universe. And what we have learned is that the audience can differentiate between an iteration of the Batman character in a totally separate thing and another iteration of a Batman character in a connected cinematic universe. Which is a very different scenario, because a lot of people say, well, why can't Sony do live action Spider-Man when so-and-so is doing live action Spider-Man? Because they're not so separated. It's a different thing. The audience understands these are completely never going to interconnect, never going to cross over, no connective tissue whatsoever.
Yeah.
Between these different Batman.
And then they did just connect them. So those universes are all within the multiverse.
You're talking about on the Spider-Man side.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
so
DC
we've already
did
said
not do that.
Right. So that's why
DC
Spider-Man wouldn't.
has never remotely hinted that they were going to connect in the DCU with this Batman universe. And
even
all this
across
kind
the
of stuff.
Spider-Verse connected.
Yeah.
So with,
they even
Garfield,
connected that in. They brought in Gambino.
Mm-hmm.
They had Mrs. Chen. They did all that kind of stuff, right? DC has never done that. So I love hearing James Gunn just like putting this to rest. Say, look, no, of course we're not canceling it. It's going to be a massive gold mine for us. Why would we cancel it? It's a big win for us. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to cancel it. And I continue to sit here to be very excited for it. Now, fortunately for us, we just found out that in September, wait a second, September? September? Or was it November? That
September, it's coming up.
That Penguin, the new installment set in that Batman universe with Colin Farrell, is coming out in like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that will hold us over for a little while, I think, until we get the new Batman.
Definitely.
But,
that'll hold us over. And then for our world, we're going to start getting news this fall about casting. And
so we're going to start getting a lot more
steam
stuff.
building up.
Anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about this? Did you ever buy into the rumors that people try to create and spread around that Batman 2 was going to be canceled?
I love
Are
rumors.
you looking forward to that? Maybe you didn't like the first Batman. That's fair. All film is subjective. Maybe you didn't like the first one. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, it's time for us to move on to the most important part of our show, which is taking your live comments and questions. But before we do, we're going to take another quick moment and thank another sponsor of today's episode. I'm wearing them right now. Our friends at The Perfect Jean. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, The Perfect Jean. Guys, are you tired of the rough and rigid jeans crushing your boys? Well, today's sponsor, The Perfect Jean, finally solved all of your denim difficulties. They make great looking, perfect fitting jeans that are as comfortable as sweatpants. The secret? A special denim fabric that is super soft and has the perfect amount of stretch so you can squat, do yoga, or just sit around all day without ever having to take them off. I'm going to admit I was a little bit skeptical because to me, jeans have always been jeans. They're practical, but not always the most comfortable. But I'm telling you guys, it's not an exaggeration. Once I put on these jeans, the Perfect Jean redefined what jeans can be to me. They're the perfect fit, they stretch, they breathe, and again, they're just insanely comfortable. So guys, it's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc/Campea15. Our listeners get 15% off your first order plus free shipping, free returns and free exchanges when you use code Campea15 at checkout. Again, that's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc/Campea15 and use the code Campea15. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the John Campea Show and tell them we sent you. And thank you to our friends at The Perfect Jean for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys. With all that down, let's get to your live comments and questions here, shall we? Jonathan, what we got up first?
Xander says, hey, John, did you ever watch the Arcane documentary Bridging the Rift on YouTube? It's 5 episodes and details how Arcane was made and the issues that the creators faced. If you haven't, I highly recommend it.
I didn't even know such a thing existed, so I did not, and I'm definitely going to have to check it out. Again, to me, I think Arcane is the greatest animated show ever made. It's just... I've never seen a show like an animated show with that level, a high level of writing. It's just incredible. So I'm going to have to go check it out. Thanks for putting it on my radar. All right, what's next?
We got Chubbs GPT who says, happy Philippine Independence Day. Shout out to you, Ray and Ann and the whole Aura clan. And to you, John, for being an honorary Filipino-in-law. To everyone here,
Mabuhay.
Mabuhay, baby.
Which is Tagalog for live long and prosper.
Heck yeah.
Well, salamat. Salamat po, my friend. Yes, Ann and I specifically planned our wedding day to be on Filipino Independence Day. That's a total lie. I had no idea today was the Philippines Independence Day. So happy Independence Day, Ray.
Yeah, now you know.
Now I know. No, it's not. You know what? Our anniversary is on, I guess now, the Philippines Independence Day and Matt's birthday.
Yeah, our friend Matt Bernard. Shout out to Matt. Happy birthday, bro.
By the way, that picture I had pulled up on the screen earlier of Ann and I, our friend Matt Bernard. You guys remember, he used to do For Your Consideration for me. For those of you who've been following me for a long time, Matt was my co-host on For Your Consideration. He's also a very good photographer, and he took our wedding pictures for us. So happy birthday, Matt. All right, what's next?
We got Jay Newby with the 2-parter. Yesterday on FBI, on Facebook, sorry, I made a Who's Lady Deadpool post. This doofus said, let's boycott the movie if it's Taylor. I gave him multiple reasons why that was dumb, a dumb comment. One of them was the fact that she's not even a controversial person, like a Mel Gibson, and if he's in something I may like The Continental, I put the controversy to the side and watch the show. He changed the topic to The Patriot. As I read that, I heard The Patriot brought up on yesterday's show, weird moment. And you were, man, that's triple weird moment then, because it was a weird moment for you.
It was a very weird moment for me, because I just watched a clip of The Patriot that morning, which was really weird.
Yeah.
Listen, I am told, I don't know why anybody goes like, oh, keep this person out of that movie. What I don't care. But listen, if they had announced that, I don't know, Drake was going to be the lead in Blade, yes, I would roll my eyes. I would roll my eyes.
No.
Not because I dislike Drake, but because Drake is not an actor and don't put him in the... Now, if you tell me Drake is going to do a cameo as another character, like quick in there, short sort of thing, yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I don't understand anybody being like getting riled up about somebody being in a movie, especially somebody as like non-controversial as that.
And also doesn't affect your life like in any way. If you keep someone out of your life and you do it good, they shouldn't bother you at all.
Yeah. All right. What's next?
Popcorn and Coke. Should Disney have paid for Hader and Kaling on Inside Out 2? I believe the story was Disney thought they asked for too much. I don't think Disney made a mistake, and maybe neither did the actors. Just curious what you think with the movie coming out now.
I watched the first 30 minutes of Inside Out 2 at CinemaCon. I had no idea Mindy Kaling wasn't still doing the voice of Disgust. And I had no idea that any of the voices were different.
Oh, she's not a part of the movie?
Nope, she did the voice of Disgust in the first one, but she's not in the second one. I have said this forever. Animation studios have to get over this obsession with getting high-profile actors to do the voice acting instead of just going out and getting people who dedicate themselves to just the art of voice acting. Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely some exceptions to that. Mike Myers doing the voice of Shrek, of course. But then you don't have to fill out the cast with every other character has to be a named, recognized actor. You're paying more money than you need to, and you're actually lowering the quality of your product. Amy Poehler as Joy. Absolutely. I mean, she's wonderful in, but you don't have to then fill out every single other character with a big recognizable live action named actor when you could spend a lot less money and actually give those jobs to people who dedicate themselves to nothing but the craft of voice acting. Just saying. So I love everybody who's involved with it. The only other thing too, Meredith.
Oh yeah. Phyllis.
Sorry, not Meredith.
Phyllis Smith.
Phyllis from The Office has to continue to be Sadness.
She is. She's cast as Sadness. Louis Black is still Anger.
Louis Black is still Anger. So,
but again, these aren't like it falls somewhere in between what you're saying, because these are actors, but they don't come with a heavy cost.
Yeah, they're not going to come with the price tag that a Mindy Kaling's going to come with. And don't get me wrong, that's no disrespect to Mindy Kaling. I think she's a brilliant comedic mind. I really do. But you don't need that to be Mindy Kaling. Anyway. All right, what's next?
Okay. Suthia says, if we are all to retell Magneto with a different backstory, and if we are to assume that X-Men characters are from a different universe, then couldn't the story be as simple as him as a young boy having to deal with a more horrifying blip of his universe?
No. You have to understand, Magneto's trauma has to come from being subjected to and bearing witness to the absolute worst in humanity. Like, his universe's version of Thanos doing the snap doesn't do that.
Yeah.
It has to be something more grounded. It's why historically, at least since, the 1999 X-Men movie, that was an Eric Lencher who lived through the Holocaust, who lived through the concentration camps, to see just how vile humanity can be. That doesn't work anymore because that Magneto would be dead today, right? Or 100 years old. So now, if we're going to tell this story of Eric, that element of his background has to be from something that is grounded in our real world experience. That is another example of showing humanity at their worst, whether it's a Rwandan genocide or some other big, huge human tragedy that we've done, something that shows that he was subjected to the worst of humanity that kind of molded and shaped his philosophy as he grew up. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, the idea of keeping it the World War II concentration camps is absolutely idiotic. It's completely idiotic. Because again, that would mean you'd have to have a 100-year-old Magneto today. And immortality and slow aging is not a characteristic of Magneto. That is not one of his powers. So like it blows my mind that you get some people that would rather completely fundamentally change a character, like giving him superpowers he's never had, just so you don't have to change a historical thing. The important thing about the Holocaust in the background of Magneto is that it just exposed Magneto to how horrible humanity can be. But that doesn't work anymore unless you're going to have a 100-year-old Magneto. So you come up with another background thing that exposes. The important thing is not which specific human event it was, but that it was a human event that showed the worst in humanity. And that is far more important to staying true to the character than suddenly giving him brand new superpowers that the character has never had. So anyway, that's the thing to me. All right, what's next?
Tron says, you've talked a lot about the success of Bad Boys and Will Smith's comeback, but let's give Martin Lawrence, who's fantastic, and Adil and Bilal some love, regardless of back row's quality. I'm sure seeing it get canned wasn't easy for them. They're good directors. Nothing in this industry is easy. Even success can also be difficult.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And listen, Martin Lawrence is very, very good in Bad Boys. Again, but for a lot of people, I think how Bad Boys was going to do was going to kind of become a little bit of a, fairly or unfairly, a bit of a referendum on whether or not the average movie-going public was ready to move on and allow Will Smith to move on with his career now. After sitting in the penalty box for as long as he had and paying the price that he's already paid, are we now ready to let him move forward? I've been saying forever, or for a while now, that it is time to let him move forward. Obviously, this Bad Boys didn't make as much opening weekend as the last one did, but I think it made enough money to show that, yeah, I think for the most part, people are ready to move on. But yeah, it's not just Will Smith. Obviously, it's Martin Lawrence. It's the supporting cast was wonderful in the film. The directors had a big part to do with it as well. A lot of kudos to go around for Bad Boys Ride or Die. All right, what's next?
We got, well, your name says message for John Campea, so I guess it's just basically a donation.
All right, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Bry Guy says, Cartoon Network's The Amazing World of Powerpuff Gumball movie in 23D, my grand brosist reinvention of the Watterson family's box office bomb adventure.
None of that statement made any sense to me.
That was really hard to read, too.
None of that made any sense to me.
But Ray, we're going to have Ray look that up right now.
Yeah, let me
see if any of it's real.
Okay, what's next?
Just Your Average Joe says, have any of you been to Sinopolis theaters? No, it's a dine-in theater with good food, recliner chairs, and John, bottomless popcorn for $10. See, the $10 is great. There are only 2 in LA County, Inglewood, Pico, Rivera, and I believe the latter is close to you guys. And I say $10 is great because it's bottomless. Like, it could have been like 25.
Okay, so I have never been to one. I have friends who's gone to them. They all say it's been quite good. See, the $10 bottomless popcorn, I'll be honest with you.
But you never eat it all.
That's the problem. It looks like a good deal.
Yeah.
But it's actually not. I get a large popcorn almost every time I go. I can't remember the last time I actually finished a large popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
I normally, and this is true, and I know this is totally wasteful, but it's part of my movie going, habit, my routine. I normally get about a third of the way through the bucket and then I'm done.
Yeah, I'm like halfway.
So like a $10 bottomless bucket of popcorn doesn't really do anything for me because I maybe half the time I get through half of it.
Right.
So now what I do like is what one of our viewers wrote in and told us about the other day. Harkness, $30. Harkins?
Harkins.
Yeah, not Harkness. That's Agatha.
It was Harkness all along.
It was Harkness all along. Harkins, I should say. $30 gets you popcorn for a year.
Which is crazy. And up to 31 fills. So that's like 2 to 3 a month.
That is awesome. That's a great deal. Now, granted, it's like a medium popcorn. It's like medium popcorns for as long as you go for the year. And then you can upgrade it to a large when you go for $1 extra or whatever. But a medium would be perfect for me, actually. $30 for like 30 bags of popcorn? Sign me up. That would be great. All right, what's next?
All right. Raymond says, my friend and I have a beef with Star Wars Parent Trap. I know it's a suspension of disbelief, but why cast 2 different young actresses as twins who grow up to look like one another? Luke and Leia were twins, but they didn't grow up looking like each other. Well, because they're identical twins. There's paternal.
I've had 2 sets of identical twin friends of mine growing up. And I've known one set of twins that are not identical twins. Like, there are 2 different types of twins. There's non-identical twins and identical twins. And by the way, growing up right up the street from me on Carson Drive,
Fraternal, I mean,
I had identical twin friends who honestly didn't look identical. But then when we got into college age, it was hard to tell them apart. So it to me, it's that's not an issue. I have issues with the Acolyte. That is definitely not one of them. That's a peepaw thing. That's not a real issue. All right, but there are other big ones that I'll talk about on open mic later today. All right, what's next?
Let me see. Let me get back to that one because I don't know if they're spoilers. Ray Loves Trenchcoat says, I remember seeing Rise of Skywalker opening night, awful film, but it had one saving grace. During the kissing scene between Kylo and Rey, someone in the audience yelled out, "Oh, hell nah." We all just erupted in laughter. Reminded me of that episode of Seinfeld, where George was trying to do the same thing but could never get the timing right, or someone took the chance from him.
That sounds like a funny episode with Seinfeld.
I will say this for Rise of Skywalker, okay? And this is something that I said because I was at the world premiere of Rise of Skywalker, and I made a video walking from the theater to the after party, in which I said, "This isn't it. This did not work for me." But the one thing I did say, and to this day I will give credit where credit is due. They took a big swing, right? Like, say what you want, and I have said a lot about The Rise of Skywalker and how much I hate that movie, but you can at least say they did not play it safe. Maybe they should have a little bit more. I will at least say they took a big swing. They struck out, but I will at least give credit where credit's due that hey, you know what? They took a big swing. They tried something very audacious. It was dumb, but they were going for something. I get it. They were going for something. It just completely didn't work. But yeah, it all comes down to lack of a plan and just treating. You know what they did? They treated those Star Wars movies like it was a choose your own adventure. Well, maybe we'll go this way, or maybe we'll go this way. Maybe we'll walk down the lighted path, or maybe we'll take the cave of mystery. And it's just. It didn't work. Dear God, it just didn't work. Anyway. All right, what's next?
It's the most convenient galaxy ever. I mean, you just hyperspace anywhere. You meet the person immediately.
They're just there.
Anonymous says, so this wasn't a spoiler. Acolyte episode 3. There's definitely more to be revealed in future episodes. The trailer and TV spot footage showed the Wookiee Jedi attacking Torben and Sol in front of the witches. The Jedi definitely did something nasty. I wish these episodes were longer.
Look, I'm going to talk about it more on open mic later today. There are a couple of really interesting things in Acolyte episode 3, which I won't go into detail right now. Again, we'll talk about an open mic later this afternoon, to give everybody a chance, a few more hours to get caught up and make sure you've seen episode 3. They do some very interesting things, but here's the problem with TV shows and movies. You can do something interesting, but it doesn't mean you did it well. You can do something interesting, but it doesn't mean you did that thing well. This reminds me, I can't remember what it was, but there was some movie many, many years ago that at the core of it, there were some firefighters at the core of it. And I can't remember the name of the movie now, but I remember watching the movie and saying, this movie was not good. And like, I got blasted by some people saying, how dare you disrespect firefighters like that? This movie tells the story of firefighters who don't get enough credit. Like cops get all the credit. Like firefighters need to be given. And this movie tells a story about firefighters. How dare you besmirch this movie? I'm like, listen.
Was that the one where they were like in the forest fighting the forest fire?
I can't remember, to be honest. It was so long ago. It definitely wasn't Backdraft because that movie rules. But it was this movie. And I remember saying to them, like, look, it's great that they decided to make a movie honoring firefighters. And to make firefighters, like, that's great. But it doesn't mean you did it well.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't pretend like it was good just because we like the theme. And while they did some interesting things, and again, I won't list them off here because just for people who haven't had a chance to watch the episodes, you got a few more hours to do that. They did some very, very interesting things, but they didn't execute them well. I did not have fun watching the episode. Anyway, we'll talk more about that a little bit later today. All right, what's next?
Haley Steinfeld's wife says, hey all, I also do not think this iteration of Blade with Ali will be made, but it's ironic that Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan are filming a vampire movie based in the 80s right now for WB. Fun fact, Anne's girl crush Haley Steinfeld is also in the movie.
Yes, she is. By the way, everybody talks about Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce, who I actually think they're an adorable couple. Nobody talks about Haley Steinfeld as for at least a year or two now has been dating the Buffalo Bills quarterback, Josh Allen.
I know why. It's because no one cares.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, like you
But
could
that's a power couple too.
you could cut to a shot of Haley Steinfeld at the football game, and no one would be like, "Let's tune in. It's Haley Steinfeld."
Yeah, no, that's true. It's totally different. Totally different thing. Anyway, all right, what's next?
All right. Although, to be fair, more people would tune into that than a clip of me. So, Anonymous says, after Ahsoka, I got a zen about Star Wars. To me, Star Wars is the original trilogy, and the prequels, sequels, shows are all supplemental. If they're good, great. If not, maybe next time. It's way better than living and dying on whether the latest thing is any good. Yeah, man. Just roll with it, man.
You know what? That is really, really good wisdom.
And then you get something like Andor. So it's like, cool.
Like, like to me, Star Wars is the original trilogy. That's what Star Wars is. All right. Whatever you think about the garbage prequels, the sequels, and the Disney Plus shows and whatever, sometimes things will be okay to good to, in the case of Andor, really good. And sometimes it'll be not so good to horrible to just not for us, like Book of Boba Fett or Obi-Wan or Ahsoka or whatever, sort of thing. Everything Star Wars after Return of the Jedi, I agree with you, is supplemental. It's nothing is core Star Wars. There is one thing that is core Star Wars, the original trilogy. And I think if you had a healthy view of the Star Wars universe like that, you wouldn't get so prissy about when something comes out that doesn't quite work. Like I live and die Star Wars, man. I love Star Wars. But when Obi-Wan comes out and it's not good, I don't lose my sense of identity and lose my mind over it, because it doesn't affect in any way.
Star Wars is ruined.
Yeah. It doesn't affect in any way my love of Star Wars, because to me, core Star Wars is New Hope, Empire, Return of the Jedi, and everything else is supplemental. And if the thing in the supplemental is good, great. Like Rogue One or Andor, great, wonderful, had a blast with that. That's great. And if it turns out to be bad, like Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, Mandalorian Season 3, Rise of Skywalker, I mean, whatever. Okay, that was bad. That's fine. It was bad. And you can ask me about why I thought it was bad, and I'll talk about how it's bad and all that kind of stuff. But it ain't gonna get me like pissed off. Now, I may look at the overall direction of Star Wars and feel like, hey, I would still prefer it to get good. And I only think it can do that if Kathleen Kennedy goes, and I'll lay out my reasons for Kathleen Kennedy. But I don't get this whole thing about how everybody clutches their pearls and gets their tiny little, blueberry balls all wrapped up into twists when, okay, something came out that you didn't like. All right. We move on. It's not core Star Wars anyway. And if it's great, don't get too excited. Like, I love Andor, but it's not like I go, Star Wars has been redeemed because Andor was so good. Like, just take a deep breath, everybody.
Yeah, get a life.
You know what it's like? It's like sports fans, like when their team loses a game, it's like, the world is falling, fire the coach, fire everybody. It's like, dude, it's a season. You're going to win some games, you're going to lose some games.
Yeah.
And whatever, take a breath. I really like the way our viewer put that. I mean, like, everything else is supplemental.
Yeah.
Look at it as such. And if something comes out that's good, great, enjoy it. And if something comes out that's not so good, go, well, that one didn't work.
Right.
We'll see how they do on the next one.
You've got a
Move
life.
on. Yeah.
Captain Victory, I just recommend you just take that little dial, go a minute and a half back, and re-listen to what we just said. It'll explain everything. Time travel.
Time travel. All right, what's next?
Bobenheimer.
I see Oppenheimer.
Hello, team. I listen daily on my commute. Sorry if I missed this on the past show. I wonder why the industry doesn't report tickets sold as a metric in addition to earnings. Seems like tickets sold may be a more accurate stat over time, adjusted for inflation. But what is that?
Okay, so here's the thing. I've addressed this so many freaking times. I've had to go over this. Look, it's not an accurate metric at all. Because selling a movie ticket in 1974 meant something very different than trying to sell a movie ticket in 2024. Selling a movie ticket in 2024 was a supremely easier undertaking to do. At the time, there was limited amount of movies coming out, which meant you had less competition in movie theaters. You did not have 500 channels on cable. You didn't have video game systems. You didn't have pro sports being to the level that they are today. You did not have streaming services. You didn't have the competition for disposable entertainment income like they do today. One ticket sold in 1974 is not the equivalent of one movie ticket being sold in 2024. It's not equal. It's not the same. It's not a level playing field. Because again, the job of selling a movie ticket in 1974 was infinitely easier than the job of selling a movie ticket in 2024. There's far more things people have to spend their money on, far more entertainment options than there were before. It is a far more movies coming out into the movie theaters than they ever were before. It is a completely different landscape. And this notion of, well, you got to take inflation out of it and you got to do this and get, no, listen, the reality is that there is no perfect way, just like there's no perfect way of trying to compare points in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's era to points in LeBron James' era. There's no perfect way to equate it because the game was different. Wayne Gretzky scored like 100 goals in a season, but the game is different today. Right? It's a different game. So it's very difficult to equate perfectly. The best way to equate it, not perfect, but the best, is simply the dollar by dollar equation. Because yes, like for instance, movie tickets are more expensive today. Yes, but it's also, to counter that, it's more difficult to sell those tickets today than it used to be. And while it doesn't bring you to a zero-sum equivalency, it is still the least flawed way of trying to compare it. There's no perfect way. And again, a ticket-to-ticket comparison over eras is a false equivalency because they're radically different things. Anyway, all right, what's next?
David says, hello, John and crew. I'm very pumped for Paddington in Peru. It's too bad that Paul King can't helm this installment because he brings an undeniable charm and flavor to the table. But I'm excited for Dougal Wilson to carry on the torch. Even if the film is half as good as Paddington 2, then I will be jumping with joy. Apologies if you already talked about this today. I'm writing these before the schedule of topics. You're all the best. You're all the best, and I love what you do for us every day.
Yeah, and again, it was very important that Paul King is still involved with. He's the producer of the film. He was very involved in the pre-production of it, as a matter of fact, like a real producer, not just a producer in name. And you know, the blueprint's been laid there. They know the direction we're going. You got some carryover from the teams that made the first two into the team that's making the third. So, and listen, I'm with you. The Paddington movies are so good that I don't even need Paddington 3 to be as good. Like if Paddington 3 is 75% as good as Paddington's 1 and 2, I'm going to love it. I may not think it's the greatest movie of all time or anything like, but I'm going to love it if it's just 75% as good. Now, of course, things can go very badly in making a movie. Maybe the movie ends up being terrible, but all I know is that I saw the trailer this morning, man, and I loved it. So we'll see how it turns out. All right, what's next?
Brandon says, went to AMC to see Fellowship of the Ring with a showtime of at 4:30, walked in at 4:35. Missed the first 5 to 10 minutes. Why? Yeah, because that's a Fathom event, and so they don't run the trailers for Fathom events.
The Fathom event stuff is different, and you do got to be careful of that. But what really bothers me is when AMC pulls that BS during a regular movie, right? Like I walk into one movie, supposed to start at 7, starts at 7:31. By the time you get through your this is why Dolby's so awesome, and we come to this place and get some popcorn, and here's 17 trailers. It's like 31 minutes have passed. Another time I walk into a movie 15 minutes after its start time and I've missed the first 5 minutes. So AMC purposely tries to F with your head to try to manipulate you into coming into the theater early and sit through the trailers, and it's BS, and they need to change that. But yes, to Jonathan's point, the Fathom events are a little bit different. Expect those things to start when they're supposed to start. All right, what's next?
So we got Matan who says, from Power Rangers not continuing on Netflix, My Little Pony G5 canceled due to the producer not wanting to use AI and firing the team in WOTC that helped Larian on Baldur's Gate 3. Why is Hasbro dropping the ball under Chris Cox? That's his actual name.
First of all, the first couple of things you mentioned, I couldn't give a crap about. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest with you. I'm not dissing you if you do like those things. Not at all. Different things for different people. But personally, I don't give a crap about that stuff. Listen, Hasbro, and take this with a grain of salt. Hasbro, for a number of years, provided nearly 50% of my household income because my wife, Ann, for a number of years, was kind of a bigwig over there. So take that with a grain of salt. If something's not making money, then it's not making money. Right? You can love something all you want, but if it's losing the company that's making it money and it's not turning a profit, then they're going to either pull the plug on it or make significant changes to it. So it's just a part of the reality of this stuff. All right, what's next?
Hardest cases. Have you seen the new release pics of the new Hot Toys Wolverine figure from Deadpool and Wolverine? The Hugh Jackman likeness looks amazing, and this is also one of the cleanest looks yet of him masked, and I think it looks pretty good.
I have not.
I'll look it up.
I saw some renders, but I didn't think they were actually Hot Toys. I thought they were just fan created renders. So if the actual Hot Toy ones are out there,
yeah.
are they out? But is it actually official?
6 hours ago.
And that's released from Hot Toys?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, here.
Wow. Then they're doing something that Disney hasn't done yet, which is releasing an actual look at him in the mask.
There you go. Wow, that shot all the way to
First
the left
of all,
is crazy.
How good of a job does Hot Toys always do on their facial sculpts? That's spooky.
That's like, I feel like they took an image and then put it over or something. Like that's not really the toy, but it is.
Yeah, it feels like they just put a face map, an actual face map of Hugh Jackman and put it on the toy. But their facial sculpts are so crazy good.
Look at that mask.
But the mask looks really good too. Yeah.
I wonder if he really is going to sport that in the...
Well, I mean, if they're putting that on the Hot Toy and it's officially labeled the Deadpool and Wolverine thing, then we're probably going to see it. I'm just surprised Disney let them release this before releasing a look at it in a trailer or something first, because it seems like they've been trying to hide that.
Yeah.
Either way, it looks great. Looks fantastic. Love it. All right, what's next?
Okay, so we got Junis says, while I didn't think the Acolyte episode 3 was sensational, as Perry Nemiroff described it, I thought it was by far the best one yet. And I quite enjoyed it. Made me feel sympathetic towards OSHA, at least.
Again, I think they did several very interesting things in the episode. I just didn't feel they did those interesting things well. Again, I'm withholding my thoughts until open mic, my full thoughts on the episode last night until open mic a little bit later today. Give more of you guys, because I can't really effectively go into my thoughts without talking about specific details that I don't want to do until you guys have had a few more hours to at least watch the episode. Then we'll talk about it a little bit later on open mic. So I'll just say this. I thought they did some very interesting things in it, and I just don't feel that they did those things well. But we'll talk about this stuff later.
I mean, my only thought is they should have dropped 3 and 4 together after watching 3. For me. I
just think they need to get over this bullshit of making 30 to 40 minute episodes, because that episode was about 39 minutes. 39 minutes when you took away the credits. I mean, it's ridiculous. They've got to give you full fleshed out episodes, and they just refuse to do it, and it really hurts their stuff. Anyway. All right, what's next?
Sam Fisher says, first Holly Hunter, now Paul Giamatti. I'm getting outrageously excited for the Starfleet Academy show. How good are these scripts that they were able to get both Hunter and Giamatti?
I asked myself the same question, like, to get like these Oscar caliber actors signed up for it. Again, does not guarantee that it's going to be good. Doesn't guarantee it's going to be good, but it, at least in a world that this either leans good or leans bad, it definitely leans it good. So I'm hopeful for it, man. I am. And I'm getting kind of excited about seeing it myself. I'm really excited for Strange New Worlds to come back, but aside from that, I think this is the next most exciting thing I think there is for the Star Trek universe right now. All right, what's next?
Sam Fisher says, did you hear about the passing of YouTuber Ben Potter, aka Comic Storian? He died this past weekend in a single vehicle car crash. My heart goes out to his wife and the rest of his family. We definitely heard about it.
This was brought up yesterday on yesterday's show. Again, I have never heard of the gentleman, which is fine. There's hundreds of thousands of great YouTubers out there that I've never heard of, and even more of them have never heard of me. And that's just the world of YouTube. So I did not bring it up because somebody asked, hey, how come you didn't talk about this? It's because I've never heard of the guy, and it would be disingenuous. And nothing would be worse than being just disingenuous over a tragedy like that. So I made a choice not to talk about it. So yes, I did hear about it. I still don't know anything about it personally myself. But yeah, obviously it's always tragic when you hear about stuff like that. Absolutely. All right, what's next?
John M says, happy anniversary, John. What's your favorite wedding theme movie? Mine's Wedding Singer, underrated Sandman performance.
Wedding Crashers.
Oh, man.
Wedding Crashers. I know that's weird to say in a positive way about weddings. Like maybe say like Father of the Bride or
4 Weddings and a Funeral.
My Best Friend's Wedding, or Best Friend's Wedding is really, actually my Best Friend's Wedding is kind of awesome. You know what? Whenever I kind of do my top 10 favorite comedies, I never think about My Best Friend's Wedding, but there might need to be a place for that on there. Anyway, but yeah, for me, it's still Wedding Crashers. You know what's really cool? Like Wedding Crashers came out in an era when some of the best comedies ever were coming out. Because it was right around the time that 40-Year-Old Virgin came out, which like is my all-time favorite comedy is 40-Year-Old Virgin. Right around the time, in the same kind of window-ish, if you will, of Anchorman. And like, oh, that was just an era of some really great comedies, man. But yes, I would say Wedding Crashers is my favorite one.
Crazy Rich Asians?
Yeah, that's definitely a wedding-themed one in many ways.
Right.
Because it's not the main character's wedding.
Oh,
It's
right.
a wedding of a couple of side characters as a side note. But yeah, that would be up there too. I love Crazy Rich Asians. All right, what's next?
Okay. Kwanko, the sexy parrot, says, John, I don't know what to say. I watched Under Paris, and I can't tell if you were just effing with us the whole time. You praised it. For the first hour, I was like, okay, this is a goofy shark movie. Then the ending. My God, that ending. I was literally in tears for like an hour, and I can't stop thinking about it.
By the way, I said in my review, I didn't really like the ending. The ending got a little sci-fi for me and all that kind of stuff. By the way, #1 movie in the world on Netflix right now, Under Paris.
Was he in tears of laughter?
No, I think he was in tears because it was just how...
okay.
He called it a masterpiece.
I watched the beginning, but I haven't finished it.
He calls it a masterpiece right here, so I don't know.
I really like the movie a lot. I really do. And I've heard from a lot of people that said, John, I saw that movie. Like Soul texted me.
Oh, yeah. Me and him like The Happening.
And he was like, John, I watched Under Paris. I didn't really like it. It's like, hey, listen, all film is subjective. If it didn't work for you, that's totally cool. But like to me, I mean, obviously the greatest shark movies are Jaws and Jaws 2. Those are the greatest shark movies. But I think to me, this is the best shark movie I've seen other than the Jaws movies. I really do. I thought it was great. Baby. I thought it was great. And it beat Hitman. It beat out Hitman as the #1 Netflix movie in the world right now. Just
okay.
Being #1 doesn't mean you're good, by the way, but I really liked it.
I still like the opinion of like it should have been called Shark de Triomphe.
Shark de Triomphe would have been a much better title. 100% agree.
All right. I don't care what D's Jose says. Last week, y'all forgot to bring up my favorite Filipino from the late 80s and early 90s. We're so sorry we forgot to do that.
Yeah.
Ernie Reyes Jr. He was a stunt double for one of the 1990 Turtles until finally getting a main role in the second 91 Turtle movie. But my favorite role was in 1993 Surf Ninjas.
Was Ernie Reyes Filipino?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
He was. I completely forgot. Forgive me, Mr. Ernie Reyes. You were the first Filipino I ever encountered on TV as well. I think, was he in that Chuck Norris movie, show Sidekicks? Remember that show Sidekicks? Does anybody remember this show?
I thought that was a movie. Was that a...
Yes, he was in Sidekicks.
And he was the other boy. Because the main character was like one guy, what's his name? Shoot. Chuck Norris was in it, and I can't get it to...
Last Dragon, Red Sonja, yeah.
Jonathan
Sidekicks.
Brandis was the kid in it.
Jonathan Brandis, is no longer with us, but yep.
Yeah.
Anne
Oh,
likes
he's
to
not?
say
No.
that this girl, Shay Mitchell, is Anne says she is our future daughter who's come back in time because she's a Canadian Filipino. So she loved. By the way, Shay Mitchell, who is from Pretty Little Liars, she's got a new show. I think it's on Netflix, where she like travels around the world drinking local alcohols and stuff like that. And made me watch a couple of episodes. It's actually pretty cool. It's actually pretty good. All right, what's next?
Jason Solo says, I'm now convinced that Jedi Master Torben is the smartest character in Acolyte. He drank that poison to get out of this show. Against my better judgment, I will keep watching just to see what happens with Soul, but this is painful.
Yeah, it's not painful. To me, it's not painful. It's just disappointing. But again, I'll go into details later. All right, what's next?
Okay, on to our members. Real Life Entertainment says, spending time in Disneyland with the fam. Every time we're in SoCal, I feel just a little closer to this channel's community. Thank you for all the great content and good times with great friends.
Aw, thank you, man. I appreciate that. And I hope Disney doesn't rip you off too much being at Disneyland. I'm positive the moment you walk in the gates, if you turn around quick, you'll see a Mickey Mouse actually reaching into your back pocket and like stealing your cash for nothing. Anyway, okay. But I do hope you have a good time.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Sir Malmston says, for years, TV networks pushed May sweeps for ratings and large ad buys, followed by summer reruns. Why is that? Is viewership down in the summer? Well, they can't make production all year long, so it's the time in between the series.
Yeah, I mean, remember, like it's not the same today. There really used to be, like Professional Report, there was a season for when there would be pilot season, and then all the shows used to start around roughly the same time and end, and then there was a season for when they would just do reruns. It was just a different era. Why they did it at that time, I don't know. I never really followed it back then. This is a good question, but I honestly don't know what the answer to it is. But it's very, very different today. All right, what's next?
Yene Moore says, hey, John and crew, just finished watching The Offer following your recommendation, and wow, what fantastic
Underlooked gem.
Superb acting and incredible story. Truly explains perfectly the role of a producer. So glad to have the chance to watch it through before investing all the focus on House of the Dragon, The Boys, and The Bear. Thanks a lot. Great recommendation. Glad you could.
Listen, I again, like Rob and I have both been talking about this show forever. Like, The Offer is truly fantastic. You don't even have to have seen The Godfather. Although if you have seen The Godfather, it'll give you a better appreciation for the context of it. It's so good. Miles Teller is fantastic in it. The guy who plays the producer, Bubby or whatever, it's
The studio executive.
yeah, the real life Paramount studio executive. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal. It really should have gotten more award season love than it did. But if you haven't checked out The Offer, go watch it. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Ron H says, I always wondered, how did the percentage of ticket price for the theaters get determined? Is it the same throughout all theater chains? Why can't the percentage be updated to give theaters a little more of the ticket price?
Because the studios won't let them.
And what do you think would be a fair percentage for theaters to have?
Look, it's individually negotiated, and like different movies, like a distributor can negotiate from movie to movie. This is true. Back when the prequels were coming out, because everybody knew Star Wars was going to be the biggest movie, and the Phantom Menace was coming, they actually negotiated with a number of theater chains that 100% of the first week's box office would go back to Lucasfilm. And if you didn't, well, that's too bad. Your theater doesn't get the movie then to sell all the popcorn and whatever. But then after week 2 and week 3, the percentages start to lean more into the movie theater's favor. And that still happens today, by the way. The percentage that the studios get in weekend 1, it will be higher than the percentage they get in week 2. And you start to get this sliding scale where the longer that a movie's in theater, the more and more, a higher and higher percentage of the ticket price stays with the movie theater. That's why a lot of times when people come out and say, theaters keep 50% or like studios give. Listen, when you average it all out, and I got told this by the executives at AMC, who I used to work with, when it all averages out, roughly speaking, and I tell people this all the time, roughly speaking, the theaters get to keep about 1/3 of the ticket price. About 1/3. And then, well, I read that there was this and that. Okay, that might be for a certain week 1 or a week 2 or whatever. But when you average it all out, roughly speaking, the theaters get about 1/3 of the ticket price. And again, they negotiated on a film by film basis. One film might get a little bit more or a little bit less for the movie theaters and all that kind of stuff. But listen, it is definitely a system that is set in place to benefit the distributors and the studios more than it does the movie theaters. There's a reason why we've always said on this show, and why others say it too, that, you know, movie theaters don't actually make money from you buying a movie ticket. They make money from you coming in and then hopefully buying some popcorn, or buying one of the new popcorn buckets, or getting some soda, or some Reese's Pieces, or a t-shirt, or something like that. That's where they really make their money. And it's because of that scale. And the studios will never let that scale move to the theater's benefit. They'll never do it. Never. And they got to find a way to work together better. They really do, to create a better system. All right, what's next?
Sorry. Zach says, I went to the wrong button. If the Mandalorian movie is made, isn't there a risk that it will be simply seen as just a long TV movie and audience will simply just wait for the Disney Plus?
Yes. There's a bigger mirrored risk of it too, which is, what about the people who don't watch The Mandalorian?
Yeah, they learned their lesson with the Marvels, and yet here we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who have not watched The Mandalorian. And a lot of them are going to go, why would I go to this movie? I never watched the show. I'm not going to be lost. Again, I get the spirit of making this movie because Mandalorian is a unifying thing in Star Wars. Like most people in all the different little tribes amongst Star Wars fandom, and how pathetic is that we have to have tribes in Star Wars fandom, but all the various tribes in Star Wars fandom all seem to agree that we all liked Mandalorian season 1 and 2. One of the very, very few things that all the tribes agree upon. So then why would you do a Rey movie after that? No idea whatsoever. But again, the drawback of it is that I think a lot of people are just going to view it as, oh, it's just a TV movie they're going to put on in movie theaters. And it's going to alienate a lot of the people out there who don't watch Mandalorian. Because regardless of what you might think, a hell of a lot more people watch House of the Dragon than watch Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be really curious to see how this works out. I mean, I hope it's great. I trust Jon Favreau, but I just don't know if it's going to be able to do that well at the box office, relatively speaking. So I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully it'll have the same effect as like Fallout. I never played the game. I watched the series. I love the series. Hopefully it'll be a reverse with the Mandalorian.
It's hard to be reversed because you're telling people to go out.
Yeah, when you're telling people to go out to the movie theater, buy a
true.
ticket and go see it, it's a little bit different than saying, hey, you're sitting out on your fat ass at home anyway. Click this button on your remote instead of that button and give this thing a shot. And I'm so glad because Fallout is great. But again, I don't know about their philosophy here. I don't know how well it's going to work out. I hope it does.
Yeah, especially
hope it does.
So many projects have just been ignited, then canceled. King Daddy Goat says, hey guys, recently been checking out Mr. Robot on Amazon. So far, I enjoy it and I'm intrigued. Have you guys seen it? What are your thoughts and opinions? I saw the first season and then I just kind of fell off. But
I never watched it when it was on TV and I ended up binge watching it over the course of about 2 weeks. I liked it.
Mm-hmm. Is that with Malik?
Yep, yeah. Rami Malek was great in it. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Like, I don't know why. I thought the show was going to be something totally different. So it didn't end up being the show that I thought it would be. It ended up being very, very different. But I liked it a lot. I mean, it's never going to be on my top 20 greatest shows of all time list or anything, but I thought it was very enjoyable. And I actually ended up being able to binge it fairly easily. All right, what's next?
Joe Hallen says, hey, John and crew, hope your day is going well. Was wondering if Alien Romulus movie is successful with the audience and critics. It makes a lot of money. Do you think they would make it into a trilogy? Thanks for bringing on the filthy.
100%. But you can say that of any movie that's coming out.
Yeah.
Any movie you put out in theaters, if it is a huge hit with the box office, the critics, and the audience, whatever movie you put out, that movie now has a chance of being made into a trilogy. And certainly Alien Romulus is no different. And certainly it's already an IP. The Aliens franchise is already part of a franchise. So 100%, if this thing, say, makes $600 million, gets like 85% audience score and a 91% critic score, yeah, you bet your ass there's going to be announcements of a sequel coming real fast. 100%. All right, what's next?
Oppenheimer 2.
Hey, listen, don't put it by a studio that didn't. Remember, Joker was supposed to be a one-shot movie. That's it. They were insistent it was. And then it made $1 billion. And then it won Academy Awards. And then all of a sudden, hey, Joaquin, how would you like $40 million to make this movie? Like, all
Joker's not real, John.
I'm just saying.
Oppenheimer was real.
Did you guys ever
saying, don't put it by some studio executive. Do not put it by some studio executive getting on the phone with Christopher Nolan saying, hey, Christopher, what would you think maybe about making another one that happens after the event? Now, Christopher Nolan will never do it, but don't put it by studio asking him to do it.
Yeah, Titanic 2. Do you remember that one?
They did
straight
Titanic
to video.
2.
Okay, so maybe there's a chance.
Straight to video.
Did you guys ever see Hamlet 2 with Steve Coogan? It was really good. It was a really
Never
funny
did
movie.
see that.
Better than the first?
Hamlet 2. Well, it was like it was a play on it, but it was good. No Country for Bad Movies says, hey, crew, what do you think is the best natural disaster movie? I think it's Twister, but I'm a sucker for Michael Crichton.
Hard, man. There's so many.
Okay, so here's a question. Do you count asteroid movies as a natural disaster movie? If you do, my personal favorite natural disaster movie is actually Armageddon. I love Armageddon.
Yeah,
I don't
Armageddon,
care.
right.
I don't care. It's my guilty pleasure movie, man.
I did
love it.
prefer the one that came with it, the other one.
Deep Impact.
At first, just because of the realism to it.
Deep Impact was great. I love Deep Impact. I think Deep Impact is really, really good.
The Happening.
That movie was a natural disaster.
The movie itself was a natural disaster happening.
I mean, I love this question because obviously that's like one of my number one genres is natural disaster movies.
Yeah.
I'll watch them, but I can't pick right now. I'm really going blank, which is so weird. I mean, but I did say Deep Impact. I have to think about it a little bit more.
I mean, then you got Volcano, Dante's Peak. You've
we got that long 2012.
San Andreas. 2012, yeah, is I mean, it's a little more sci-fi, but it is technically a natural disaster movie.
That movie's so bad.
I did like that last one.
What was the one where everything froze?
Day After Tomorrow.
Day After Tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm not even sure if you consider it the green something with
The Green Mile.
No, with Gerard Butler.
Not Green Day. Greenland. Yeah.
I don't know if
that's another asteroid movie, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of
Greenland's
like that
really
one.
good. Yeah.
The Wave. That's a good one.
Geostorm. Jerry Miller in the live
yeah,
saying
there's a
Geostorm.
one too.
Man.
That's not a natural disaster.
Yeah, that's
movie. All right, what's
that's
next?
a car.
Todd says, so now we've established that not only can a fire occur in the vacuum of space, apparently rock and concrete are flammable too. So social commentary aside, little things like this just shows a level of amateurism I would not expect from someone wielding a budget of 15 Godzilla -1s. Was there a flame?
There was
something
fire,
that happened.
but Anne did point out to me, and I'm like, how is that on fire? Like, Anne quickly shot in, and I'll give it a pass on this, said, you don't know what that material actually is. I'm like, all right, I'll give it that. It looks like just standard stone in that room, but the reality is I don't actually know what that material is. Fine, I'll give that part a pass. Listen, to me, these little nitpicky things, that's irrelevant. Like, honestly, if your biggest problem with Acolyte is that a ship had a fire on the outside, if that's your biggest problem, then
Stop watching.
yeah, you should just stop watching TV. I mean,
You're looking.
Like, my problems have more to do with like lore and and narrative paths and writing and complexities. That's where I have my problems. Like, oh, that wall shouldn't be on fire. Like, if that's your biggest problem with the show, then just stop watching TV. Because there are real issues. There are like real issues to deal with here. That go way beyond just that.
Because people will say like, oh, well, the vacuum of space and fire. Okay. How about trajectory? There's no friction. There's no way to turn, like, there's no way to dogfight in
like, if
space.
your problem is
sound.
like, there's no air in space, so there shouldn't be fire. Yeah. Well, then there also shouldn't be the TIE fighter sound, but you're not complaining about that.
And they're not flying around in circles and dogfighting in space. You're just going in one direction, man.
You know what was really good for that? The Expanse. The Expanse did a really good job. I mean, it's still involves sci-fi, but I mean, they, for the most part, The Expanse was like the best show ever actually trying to handle the physics of space. They still employed some sci-fi.
Sure.
But I mean, they actually did a pretty interesting job
I'll tell you one more. You know who did space best?
Who?
One episode of One Punch Man when he gets punched by a big monster and he flies in space and all the sound just goes out of during the show, and he lands. You don't hear the crash. He comes back. As soon as he comes back to Earth, all the sound comes back in.
As soon as you said, you know what did it best?
One Punch Man.
In my head, I said Ray is going to say one of two things. Either One Punch Man or Bluey. I'm not sure which one he's going to go with here, but he went with the One Punch Man. All right, what's next?
All right. Espinoza says, rest in peace to NBA and Laker legend Jerry West.
Yeah, Jerry West.
Oh, yeah, man.
Who, I mean, I've always been a fan of Jerry West, but Winning Time made me think he's one of the greatest human beings that ever lived. I was really sorry to hear about it. And he's the logo.
Yep.
He's the logo. I mean, yeah, I was really upset, sad to hear about that earlier today. All right, what's next?
Dominic Suma says, one of the most underrated movie villains is Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore. I really hope they have a decent role for him in the sequel.
They must, because if I'm not mistaken,
he said something, right?
I think the first whispers that came out, like before
Drew Barrymore
let it out, I think months before that,
you're right,
he was the first guy to kind of slip. You know, Adam Sandler called me and said, working on a little something. That makes me think that I don't know how you do a Happy Gilmore 2 without Shooter McGavin. I mean, you got to have him in there, right? And he was the first one to really kind of start the whisper. So I mean, I don't know for a fact, but I imagine he's got to have a role in that. All right, 2 more questions and we'll call it a day.
Okay, Luke Smith says, hey, John and crew, I started watching Arcane. Wasn't interested at first as I've never played the game or know anything of it. It seems quite good so far, although the choice in music for it could be a lot better. There's only so much whiny emo rock I can take.
But the thing about soundtrack is not about getting music that you like. It's about employing music that enhances the atmosphere of what it is the storytellers are trying to elicit. And I thought for that, the music in Arcane was great. Listen, in League of Legends, there is no story. I mean, listen, I've talked to some League of Legends fans. No, John, you don't understand. See, no. There's no story in League of Legends. Not really. So this is all, so it's fine if you've never played a lick of League of Legends. You're perfectly good to enter into the world. But I personally thought the music for it really worked well. All right, what's next? Last question.
Culture Healer says, not surprised by the Batman announcement. However, what might this mean for other projects that were outside of James Gunn's DCU?
What other projects? The only other project was Joker.
Theoretical projects. I mean, it seems like he's still okay with Elseworlds. So
yeah,
Joker,
as far as I know, there were no other projects. There was Joker and there was Batman. That was the only other thing. So I think what it could mean moving forward, like James Gunn and Peter Safran said shortly after they took over DC, is that, yeah, they do want to explore the world of telling one-off, isolated, good stories that may not be in line with their cinematic universe, which is what I've been begging Marvel and DC to do for a decade or more. So I'm really excited about it. So I don't think Batman and Joker are going to be the end of it. I think over the years, we will see a few more. Like maybe, once we obviously have Superman kicking off the DCU, but I could see them doing another Superman that's outside of the DCU. Maybe a Red Sun. For those of you who don't know, it's the comic book What If story about what if instead of landing in a farm in Kansas, what if little baby Superman's pod landed in Soviet Russia? And how would that make it like, it's just stuff like that. I think the opportunities are there to tell stories like that. So at least I hope they do. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here, making this little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those questions. Number one, because you gave us fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. I'm going to let you guys know at 4 p.m. Los Angeles time today, like right now it's almost 1:30. So at 4 p.m. Los Angeles time today, we're going to be doing an open mic. And it's going to be a mixture of an open mic and an open spoiler discussion, sort of Acolyte episode 3. So we're going to talk a lot about that as well during the open mic today. So I hope you will come back and join me for that. So in the meantime, I want to thank the guys in the room with me, Ray Ora.
Take care.
Jonathan Voico.
See you guys.
My name's John Campea. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.